Janice Russell here today talking to you about how to manage reentry into your space after an interruption. Now, in this case, I'm talking about a space as in your home or your office, although most of my examples today will be about the home, but you can apply the same principles to your office. And the interruption could be something fun, like a vacation, or something less than fun, like a surgery or new health diagnosis or some other life transition going on. Now, I'm using the word reentry, and although I know that most people associate that with, people coming, astronauts, I should say, coming back into our atmosphere after having been out in space. The word reentry is sometimes how we feel when we're coming back to sort of our regularly scheduled routine after something has happened again, be it either good or not so good. And face it, the astronauts, they have stuff that they have to put away when they return to this Earth. Clothes, and I don't even know what else. I know they take other things with them and they have to be returned to where they were gotten from or to some other place. So we have the same kind of thing that goes on in that we have stuff when we come back from an interruption. And so let me give you an idea of what I'm talking about. I'm going to give you a couple of different scenarios and then some strategies for each of those scenarios. And if you're joining me live, feel free to pop in with a question or comment along the way. So here's the first scenario. So I'm going to give you a vacation example and a surgery example. So the vacation example is you went on vacation and you came back with basically what you left with. It is stuff you already had. The same can be said for some surgeries, like with my rotator cuff surgery. I had some specific clothes, but I already had them. They were in a spot. I had a polar care cube and it had a spot. And so all of those things came out for my surgery, just like things come out for a vacation. And they're things you already had. So once this interruption has stopped, you have to do something with them. Now, here's what we often do that is not very helpful at all. And that is we just sort of ignore the extra stuff hanging out and hope that it will take care of itself. I haven't found anyone that's found that very useful, but if you have, please let me know. Another way to approach it is to take care of it all at once. So like if you're coming back from a vacation, you just, right away or the next day, depending on when you arrive home, you unpack everything, you take whatever needs to be washed to the laundry room, etc. And then you take care of everything and you put it away all at once. Now, for a lot of people, that's really overwhelming. And so another way to approach it is to do it a little bit at a time. And you get to determine what the little bit is. So a little bit could be you unpack just the dirty clothes and sort of leave the clean ones in the suitcase. Or you unpack just the outer pockets of the suitcase. Or in my example of the rotator cuff surgery, first put away the clothes. Once I'm able to wear my regular clothes, the special clothes that I'd gotten out can be put away. Once I was done with the polar care cube, it could be put away. What can't be put away yet is some stuff that I got out for the physical therapy exercises I have to do at home because I'm still using that stuff. So I have to keep it out so that I can continue to use it. All right, so that just gives you, again, a couple of ways, and you're going to hear some of this again in the couple of other examples, but there will be a few variations and just something to think about, again, after an interruption when you're dealing with stuff. So you also have stuff that you may have acquired for a specific purpose. So let's come up with a current example for everyone, and that is COVID supplies. Now, at the very beginning of COVID, of course, we were all trying to find toilet paper and hand sanitizer. And the main issue we ran into once we actually located those items was where to put them because we bought lots of them. The good thing is that those are both things that were consumable. And so, over time, as we all got adjusted to things, we could, we could find a place for them because supplies were, dwindling along the way. Now, one thing that we acquired is masks. Now, some people went for disposable masks, but some of us got the cloth reusable masks. So at a certain point, which happily is closer now than it was, 6 months ago or so, at a certain point, we're going to have to decide what to do with those masks. Do we keep a couple out just in case? Do we pack them all away, hoping that there's, never another pandemic, but we'll be prepared in case there is? Could they be used for another health related event? So we have to decide, or do we have so many that we can, reuse some of the cloth from some of them and then just keep a few? We get to decide. Another example of the stuff that's acquired for a specific purpose is items that are gotten when you have diabetes. Now, obviously, it depends on exactly um, the severity of the diabetes, but a couple of things to think about in the beginning are, the supplies you need for testing the sugar levels, and any supplies that go along with that. You may also have specific, foods or things of that nature, as well as besides the testing, are there injections, insulin or something of that nature that you have to have. Now, in some cases, like with COVID, happily, those very specific supplies will no longer be needed at some point, for which we are all eternally grateful. With something like diabetes, the length of time with which you may need some of those supplies varies. If you get your diabetes under control and don't have to continue testing and, being quite as careful, then you may not need those supplies. Or you may not need them for a little while and then you have to bring them back out. Or you may need them for, the rest of your life. So these are supplies that are specific to whatever the interruption is. Now, here's what we often will do with that. We will leave it out. Again, whether we're talking about the COVID masks or diabetic supplies or something else that is related to an interruption, some other stuff, um, items, things like that. So we leave it out because we want to make sure we use it. We want to make sure we don't forget it. The issue is that it gets in our way. And then sometimes it gets buried under things. And so then it's not as easy to find it. And sometimes we even forget exactly where it might be buried or have been put away. And yet we still need it. So we have to figure out what to do with it if we choose not to leave it out. We're on top of everything. So one of the first things to do when you have some of this extra stuff is to decide what you will and won't need long term, because some things you may and sometimes you may not. So you have to decide that particular piece. Now, anything that you don't need long term, but which you may require again in the future, that is something that can be contained, whatever kind of container is best, and put in a less accessible place. Now, it does need to be a logical spot. So, for example, with health related supplies, maybe it goes with other health related supplies, or maybe it goes in the bathroom or, wherever it might go. You get to decide where that is, but it doesn't have to be front and center where you can pull it out right away if it is something that is not needed long term. Now, if you have something that will be needed for at least the immediate future and possibly long term, you still need to have some kind of container, even if it's an open container, but so that all the supplies, and I'm showing small, but it could be big, depending on what it is, a way to contain it. Personally, I'm a big one to label. So even if it's an open container or a clear container, I like to label. I usually label on at least two sides so that no matter how I put it in, I can see what it is, even if it's obvious, but really labels are your friend. And if it's something you're going to need, you want to put it in a place where it makes sense. So again, for example, with the diabetic supplies, Are there certain places in your house where you tend to test, or certain times of the day when you are testing? That may determine where the supplies live. I know with masks, by the door is a good place because that's usually when you're putting them on, is to go out of the house. All right, now those are sort of the easier ones. Then there's the mix of supplies. So this is scenario 3, a mix of supplies. So we'll go back to the vacation example. When you come back, you have not only what you took, but whatever you may have bought along the way. Or, for example, when I had a knee replacement, there were certain things that I needed, and some of which I had, a cane, things of that nature, and some of which I didn't, like a walker. And, knowing that I might need a walker in the future, something I need to keep. So, again, what do? You've got this extra stuff. We have some of the same decisions, of course. We can ignore it and hope it goes away. Now, that is stuff that can get in your way of your regularly scheduled life. So, leaving it out isn't very helpful. So another thing goes back to what I just talked about in terms of long-term, short-term, because if it's something that you only need short-term, you find that short-term place. And then when it comes to, oh, I don't need it, like, oh, I don't need the walker right now, happily, then I found a place in my attic for it because it's out of the way, but I can get to it if I need it, or if I need to loan it to somebody, if I don't need it myself. And when you're putting these things away, again, you can do the all at once. So after a vacation, after a surgery like knee replacement, after any other kind of interruption, maybe a college student comes home for the summer, or something of that nature, you can take time. Well, the college students should put away the stuff themselves, but for you, and when it's your stuff, you can do it all at once or a little at a time. It could be by category, by amount of time, 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there. The main thing is to do it in a way that works for you so that your space is functional. Now, what I didn't mention is when you have a case of, oh, it's stuff you already had, but it didn't have a place before the interruption. So you don't necessarily know its place after the interruption. And that, that is something I'm not going to address in this particular video. But yes, I understand it is an issue. Sometimes we have things already that didn't have a home to begin with. Basically, the bottom line is that the stuff that enters your space before, during, or after any kind of a life transition or life disruption, that is an ongoing battle because life transitions are either happening now or they are on the horizon. And so if dealing with the stuff in your space is overwhelming, I would love it if you would reach out via phone, text, email, comment below, and maybe we can discuss some ways to minimize some of that stuff overwhelm that does overflow specifically during life transitions. Thanks. Hope I've given you a couple of strategies to be able to use, and look forward to seeing you again in the future. Bye.